to everybody else, and feel free to answer in the chat if you want to, is who of you are actually familiar with B Corps? Is there anyone who is familiar with B Corps? I'm not. Tina, you're familiar with it? Yeah, Maja is, okay. Nope, no, not really, okay. Cool, Emily, at least the concept. Nope, Alex, no, all right. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of no's, and that's good. Plenty of stuff to share. So that's nice. Do you have then, this is going to be a difficult question. If anybody does know, how many B Corps do you think there are in the world right now? But without you knowing what it is, that's going to be a very hard question to answer. But maybe Tina has the answer for us. You're on mute, Tina.
Sorry, I'm like working on a project and
okay.
in class. I would say, I'll type it, sorry.
No worries. Please feel free to come on mic. 100 maybe, quite okay.
1% of
that is
1%
of companies, 1,500. All right. Well, it's a little bit more. It's 3,904 and counting at the moment. So yeah, that's compared to, I don't know how much 1% of companies would be in the world. I honestly don't know how many companies we have in the world, but I think that would be a lot more. And I'm happy to say to Emily that we can be a little bit more optimistic about this, because it's quite a bit more than 100. And a lot of them are in the process of going through the assessment right now. We'll talk about that in a bit. So yeah, as I said, Minou just completed her B leadership training. And so let's start with the basic introduction. Minou, what is a B Corp and what does it stand for?
Yes, of course. Yes, there are indeed like 3,905 right now. I just checked the website. And B Corps is it's a leading movement of businesses that choose to use business as a force for good. And they started in 2006 by 3 men in Pennsylvania who noticed that there was quite a lot going on within like CSR processes and ESG, environment, social, and governance within companies, and that a lot of companies focus mostly on creating value for their shareholders and not per se at creating value for all of their stakeholders. And they all believe, and me and Pamela believe that as well, that businesses and big corporations around the world really have the power to accelerate transition, to create new socioeconomic situations, and to build a more sustainable world. And that is, actually what certified B corporations aim to do. So B corporations are a new kind of business, and they balance the purpose and profit, and they're actually legally required to consider the impact of their decisions on their workers, their customers, their suppliers, the community, and the environment. And it all started with B-Lab. It's the non-profit organization behind it, and they are behind the B Corp certification. And they're aiming to really accelerate this economic systems change, because what they've noticed, and what a lot of us noticed, that's probably why many of you are in something that is called a sustainability session right now, is that there are systems in our society at the moment that are clearly failing. There are 26 people on this planet at the moment that have the same net worth as the bottom 3.8 billion. 60% decrease in wildlife populations across the world, and we have a 1.2 Celsius increase in temperature compared to pre-industrial levels. And all of this is the consequence of how we build businesses and consume, and how we live on this planet. And since 2006, the movement has grown, like we said, to 3,905 B corporations. And they are covering 47 countries, and they have one unified goal, and that is using business as a force for good. And the vision of B-Lab, the non-profit organization behind this, is they envision a global economy that uses businesses as a force for good. This economy comprises a new type of corporation, which is the B Corp, which is purpose-driven and creates benefits for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And we will get back to this later, because this is a very important point. It is all stakeholders and not only shareholders.
Yeah, that's a big difference, right? That is pretty much the biggest difference, actually. So I'm seeing already quite a few questions. You said 47 countries, so that answers Akvil's question. Partly. Are they mostly based in Europe? No, I think it's it started in the United States, right? B-Lab originated from the US.
And they're mostly based in America, although we do have a growing community of B Corps as well in Europe. And I can also answer the next question already. You can become a B Corp regardless of any size of company. You can also be a sole proprietor. And a B impact assessment, which is the assessment that leads to the B Corp certification. It's a set of 200 questions, but depending on what kind of sector you operate in, what kind of size of company you are, and all of these little elements you answer at the beginning, this set of questions differs. So if you are sole proprietor, you can also go to the assessment and you get a different set of questions from like a big corporation. Who cannot be big corporations are companies that are in existence for under a year, because you actually need to exist for a year, because you need to show the books for a year to actually, like, for credibility sake, and actually showcase what you have been doing. But if you're under a year old, if you're a startup and you want to become a B corporation, you can apply for B Corp status, pending status, and that shows that you are in the process of becoming a B Corp. And who also not can become B Corps is NGOs, because it really is for profit-driven organizations. It's actually using business as a force for good.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was an interesting development recently, that they started doing the pending status, because a lot of startups come up with sustainable solutions. We've seen in our sessions quite a few founders of sustainable businesses. And there was quite a strong push from them to go like, hey, we want to go for B Corp from the beginning, but now it's not possible for us. So this is one of the reasons why they decided to add the pending status. Yeah, so we already talked about this a little bit, and you've mentioned it as well. Even before we actually knew about B Corp, I've always been a very firm believer, and Minu and I, both of us, in that business can indeed be a force for good, but if they really have to want to, because it's not something that is now normal in our economy. We have a capitalist economy, basically, and it's a lot about money and about shareholders. And you already mentioned the difference between the shareholder and stakeholder perspective. So I think that would be the biggest difference between regular companies and B Corps. Is that correct? And can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. What a lot of companies are doing right now, I'm saying a lot of companies and not all companies, because you still have benefit companies that are not B Corps, or social enterprises that are not B Corps, and that are actually focused on shareholders and on stakeholders and not only shareholders. But in general, companies right now focus on gaining profit for a few, the shareholders, on a very short time, like quarterly or annually returns. They're very exclusive and they're very extractive. And what we want to move to a situation where we are creating value for everyone over a longer period of time, which is inclusive and regenerative. And this is the biggest shift in mindset, the biggest paradigm shift. And to actually achieve this, a lot within like corporate cultures, but also within business models, within processes, products, everything actually has to change. And this is what the B impact assessment uncovers in a very interesting way, because it focuses on different sections and also on your business models. And it gives you a really clear overview and insight in where you can actually create more impact and do better. So even if you're not planning on to become a B Corp straight away, but you want to go through this process, everyone, regardless if you want to certify in the end or not, can go online and access freely the B impact assessment, and actually sort of benchmark themselves already against their sector, and maybe compare like how they've been doing a couple of years ago, and so you can improve your organization without actually becoming a B Corp in the end. Although going for this certification has a lot of benefits as well.
Yeah, exactly. I'm seeing so many interesting questions popping up in the chat. I love it. Thank you for all your questions dropping in there. So first one would be, okay, well, this is an interesting one from Emily, that her perception is that companies are going to be B Corp are small to medium size, and it seems more difficult to onboard larger corporations, especially the global ones. So this is a really interesting comment, as we have actually seen quite a few bigger companies becoming B Corp. So a well-known one is Danone, a yogurt who makes yogurt and milk and all these kind of products. And they're very, very global, very big corporates, and they are actually a B Corp. Emilio, do you have any other examples of bigger companies that have become B Corps?
She's actually absolutely right. It was until recently mostly a thing for small and medium-sized companies, and it is indeed more complex for bigger corporations, because bigger corporations have multiple departments, and the process of going through it and get everyone aligned and get all the paperwork in order and all the elements in place that are needed to be certified take just longer, and it increases in complexity when the complexity of a company increases. So for that reason, indeed, for up until now, a lot of big corporations weren't joining that yet, but now Danone is indeed joining. I think that is the biggest one by far. The rest are still mostly medium, small organizations, but there is a shift. You're noticing a shift of companies that are actually moving to the B Corp status, but they are still pending in many cases.
All right. So I do know that Ben & Jerry's is one, and they've of course been bought up by Unilever. So Unilever now does have some sort of B Corp status, but not as Unilever, but as Ben & Jerry's.
No. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the interesting thing with like sister and daughter companies, that you can actually be a B Corp without the mother company also being a B Corp, which makes it a bit confusing because, for example, Greystone Bakery, which is the main supplier to Ben & Jerry, is also B Corp. So you see this like sort of ladder of companies for like one size bigger than the other, and then only the mother company all the way at the top isn't B Corp yet. And I hope that Unilever at some point will also go in that direction. That would be really cool, but I assume that is a super complex process to go through with all the departments and other companies they have in place.
Well, yeah, I mean, their sustainable living plan is pretty intricate. So I guess they have a lot of data available, but it's going to be interesting to see that. Yeah, let's hope they do, because that will set a major trend for a lot of companies, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So a question that Alex posed is why would companies actually want to become a B Corp? So that is, of course, a very, very deep question, Alex.
Yeah.
And has something to do with whether or not you see sustainability as the future or not, I would say. But I'll let Minou answer if she wants to. She has thought about it by now.
Yes, I actually gave that a lot of thought. They're on top of the whole idea that we want to move to a more sustainable and regenerative and inclusive world, which should be the main reason to actually become a B Corp. There are many additional reasons to do this, which are make a lot of sense from a company perspective. So first of all, you build a lot of trust and you earn loyalty and respect from existing and future customers, employees, and also investors. Because the combination with like third-party validation and full transparency and accountability results that consumers really trust the B Corp certification and really trust a B Corp company. At the moment, there are so many frameworks and there's so many certificates out there that kind of lost value. People are not believing in it anymore, but people are still believing the B Corp certification process, as it is very rigorous and it's very transparent. There is full accountability. You can always check on it. It changes every 3 years, so the assessment is updated, and the companies have to go through the certification process all over again. And this just gives us a lot of credibility. You also tap into new customer segments. You actually see that some online shops and also physical shops are starting to have separate B Corp departments within their company. So you have a separate landing page, for example, for B Corp brands, which people go through and actually, okay, these are the more sustainable brands. Let's go for these ones. So it gives you more visibility, and you can tap into these new customer segments, which is actually interesting because mostly, especially like Generation Z, is willing to actually pay more for sustainable products, and they also stop buying from products that they do not believe are sustainable, or they believe that are going into greenwashing. Of course, one of the most interesting one for organizations is that you're actually future-proofing your organization. Like Andrew, the co-founder of B Lab, said that in the last financial crisis, Certified B Corps were actually 63% more likely to survive than other business of similar size. Because of the assessment and because of the credibility and the trust companies, the investors have in you, and customers have in you, but also the employees that are more likely to stay with you. You attract more top talent. So your whole organization is just more sturdy because you really looked into how to make it sustainable, and you're taking care of all of your stakeholders, which also means that all of your stakeholders will take care of you more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of feeds into the question that I saw here before, was, is it hard to find what kind of investors are interested in B Corps? And I think that is always an interesting thing with sustainability right now. Not necessarily B Corp. So B Corps is a third-party validation that's quite strong out there. There are other frameworks. And what you see now with investors is that they are really looking for that environmental and social governance reporting as well, apart from financial reporting to see that the company is doing well. And there's more and more investors are really aware, like BlackRock, a really, really big investment group. Every year, the chairman, he now brings out a letter as well. And sustainability is a risk. It's a business risk right now for investors. So they are really looking for data and for facts on more than just the financial result of the past year, but also what is the company doing to stay alive in the long run, basically. And as we're learning more about climate change and we're learning more about all the things that are associated with it, it may not be the happiest, shiniest reason, if you will. It's still a business reason, and it's still a very economical reason, but it's very valid at the moment. And in that sense, B Corps is just a very strong third-party validation, also from an investor perspective. So I hope that answers your question, Jenny. Does that answer your question? You can come on mic if you want. Ooh.
Yes, I'm sure. I know there are a lot of investors who are particularly interested in sustainable options, but there's still it's still quite difficult as an investor to find. You know, if you're with one of these big groups, it's actually quite difficult to find sustainable firms or to invest in a particular type of market. Not all of the big investors do that. BlackRock is maybe one of the first.
That's true.
You know, a lot of people don't really know where their money's going.
No, that is absolutely right. And that is something else. And that's also another very big topic that we won't have the answers to today in one night, or maybe not in the coming years, but that people are working on to making that more transparent as well. And that you have those funds where you have more, where you're more in charge of where your money is going to, and that you can divest it in things that you don't want your money to be going to. Yeah, that is a topic on its own, but thank you. That's actually a nice one maybe to dive into for another night. But yeah, it is hard from both sides, I guess, from investors' perspective and from our individual perspective. Like, where is our money being used for? Yeah.
Yeah, since the last year, I've been diving into this actually with an impact investor, because we noticed indeed it's quite difficult for mostly either beginning investors or for people who are diving into like business model innovation or starting out entrepreneurs. Like, how do you start and how do you start with new concepts and ideas that are investable from an impact investing perspective, and what are they actually looking for? So if you want, Jenny, I can like afterwards connect you to someone who's doing the research in this and is really like 24/7 looking for like, how can we make impact investing easier? Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, Alex, I had your question on could the B Corp label be misused for greenwashing? No, it cannot actually, and that is why it is. That's why it's so awesome, or that's why I believe it is so awesome. It is so rigorous. It is so thorough. There is so much control on the back end from the B Lab. The paperwork has to be handled. B Lab actually on-site visits 10% of the companies that goes through the B certification process to actually check if it adds up. So it can't really be used for greenwashing. It's just too rigorous. And if you want to use it for greenwashing, you're never going to get the amount of points that is needed. There are 80 points needed from the 200. 60 points of that are from like go to the business model, and the other 140 are going into operations. and operations is divided in like 5 sectors again. What could happen is that you, for example, it doesn't always mean that you're super sustainable from an environmental perspective. If you're doing very well on the governance, the community and the workers perspective, but you're not great on the environmental perspective, it could still be that you're B Corps. It doesn't mean that you're per se environmentally sustainable or regenerative. It does mean that you have a vision on this and a roadmap to actually become more sustainable, because that is the aim of B corporations, is always to keep improving on all of the sections. So this, I do have to point that out to people sometimes who just opt in for B corporations because they want to buy products that are like low in carbon emissions or regenerative. That is not per se the case. It is more of a holistic approach to like social and environmental development.
Yeah, and based on intention, the intention to use the business as a force for good.
Yes, and the intention.
Yeah, and the intention to do better in the long run.
Yeah, and you can actually on the website also see what their past, what their goal is, what their previous scores were, where they're standing right now, where they have to improve. So yeah, it's very transparent, and you can really see, okay, this corporation is focusing on this, and this element. They could do a bit better here.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned, okay, so the challenging the assessment process is challenging. It takes quite a while to do it. Is that I know this, like it's not something we were thinking. We're looking at doing a B sprint, like how can you do this? But the assessment process on its own is not suitable for a sprint kind of run, because it's just quite a long process. What a shame, Alex. What a shame. But we're looking into something else we can do. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're trying to figure out. How can we turn this into more, how can we do this? But so you already mentioned, the business impact model, which is 60 points, which is a lot. And then 140 points in operations, which is employees, because remind me, because I'm not a B leader yet, so.
It's actually also on the mirror board. Everybody can also watch there. We have some visual support. So you can like look at the companies, the corporations that are B Corps, at the like Declaration of Independence, the stakeholders to shareholder movement, and also how the B impact assessment is divided. So it's customers, environment, community, governments, and workers. And the whole assessment in itself actually is only a couple of hours. You can fill it in within 3-4 hours. It's 200 questions. The difference is that to be able to fill out all those 200 questions, you need to align with different departments in your organizations, get the paperwork ready, know how to answer these questions, really dive deep into your corporate culture or the culture of your sole proprietorship. You have to have certain elements in place. So actually getting all of this in place and being able to go to the certification process and also prove that all the questions you answered are actually in place and that you can like hold them up within your company, then you're talking about a couple of months. And then you still have to go to the certification process. And the B Lab, the organization that goes through this process and checks everything, is actually quite busy at the moment, luckily, because that means that more and more companies want to become a B corporation. So overall, it can actually take up like 8 months, up to a year, or maybe even more. And if you're a big corporation, it can take very long because you're very complex. So it can take 1.5 years or so. And you actually then after that year, you have to change again, because it goes, the data that you have to fill in is the data of your last book year. So if the process is longer than 1.5 years, at some point you have to start updating again. And then within every 3 years, you have to go to the certification process again, because we are living in a rapidly moving and evolving world. So the questions also change every time and they're really up to date. So yeah, it is a long process, but indeed, you can't run a B sprint on the whole process. You can't run a B sprint and how to fill in this certification, how to fill in this assessment. But what you can do is actually focus on the business impact models. I'll bring you to the next one. Oh, I'm going too far.
I can do it here.
Yeah, here we are. So impact business models show how businesses are designed to create a specific positive benefit or outcome for one of its stakeholders. So it's very targeted. So it focuses on a specific stakeholder. It aims to provide significant benefits. It's documentable, very viable. My English is broke. Is part of the core lasting design of the organization. And lastly, is uncommon and extraordinary. So a good example, for example, let's stick to the Netherlands for now, is Fairphone. So Fairphone is an electronics company based in Amsterdam, and they're producing smartphones. And they focus on 4 key areas of positive impact. They focus on long-lasting design, fair materials, good working conditions, and reuse and recycling. And compared to like all the other competitors in the market, they are really offering a niche product, and they truly differentiate within their company, their business model, and their products. So this would be a impact business model. An impact business model would also be Greystone Bakery, which makes the cookie dough for Ben & Jerry's. So if you're ever munching on that, you can thank Greystone Bakery for this. And what is cool with Greystone Bakery is that they create jobs and provide integrated programs for individuals and their families to move forward on their path to self-sufficiency. So they're really trying to give people with like a distance to the job market a new chance to like work within a company. I don't think they do any check of like resume or anything. Like everybody can start working there, and it's very inclusive. So this again, here they provide a certain value for a very specific stakeholder, and this is integrated within their business model, and even integrated within their mission log. A mission log within B Corps means that the mission of the company is actually locked in from a legal perspective into the clauses of the company, which means if the company goes through a takeover, they can't just go into another direction. They still have to follow this vision and follow this mission. And this makes it a lot more durable, and also a lot more credible and safer for people who want to start working with this organization. There's more transparency because you know, even if it's going to be sold to another company, this vision and mission are still followed.
So the interesting thing, there was a question before. Let me see. I have to go back. From Akvil again, can hybrid companies become B Corps as well? So this example that you just gave of Greystone Bakeries is quite interesting, because this model that Greystone Bakeries is also known as a social enterprise, which I'm assuming, but please correct me if I'm wrong, Akvil, is what you might mean with a hybrid company, because that's the only one I can come up with, where you have an NGO with a for-profit model collaborating, because that's what social enterprises have traditionally been doing. So in that sense, yes, because there is no legal structure for a social enterprise as of now. Mm-hmm. There is in some countries they're working on it. I know in the Netherlands they are, to make that a legal structure on its own. But how a lot of companies have been doing that, social enterprises, is that they would have an NGO on the one side and a for-profit company on the side next to each other, because an NGO is not allowed to make profit and is only donation based, whereas a for-profit company was frowned upon if they would have ulterior missions that are not necessarily only about profit. So yeah, the B Corps model goes really well, fits really well with the social enterprise idea and model. So I do feel, I'm not sure about the numbers, but I do feel that quite a few social enterprises have also aimed for B Corp certification, because that gives them some sort of verification as well of what they're doing, and that it's actually business as a force for good, and that they're not an NGO who's looking for donations. So it works the other way around as well. Let's see, did you answer? Does that answer your question, Akvil, or was it a different question that you had? You can come on mic if you want. And if not, then I'm just going to go on.
In the meantime, I'll just answer Alex's questions. From the legal perspective, there is indeed what I just explained, is something that is called the mission log, which has to be, from a legal perspective, covered as well. And before we go to the B certification process, you have to follow the assessment. The assessment will then be checked by B Lab. 10% of the corporations going through the certification process, it will be on-site visited to actually check if everything is in order. And also they have to go through the legal structures. There are quite a lot of legal elements that need to be in place before being able to become a B Corps, especially on the process, for example, like governance workers and governance workers and community. So yes, absolutely. And if there is not a mission lock and they go to the certification process again, and parts of the mission and vision are changed, and parts of the assessment have changed, it can be that like you have to give your B Corp status back. And this has happened before as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Has it? Okay, I didn't know that. Do you know which company that was?
No, not on top of my head. I can look it up.
Okay.
It does.
Look
It
it up.
has happened.
Let's look it up. So I was like, actually, so still the question remains a little bit, because you were starting on why would a, like based on Alex's question, why would a company become a B Corp? It does indeed sound like a very challenging process. So you mentioned it's good for employee engagement, it's good for customer engagement.
Future proofing.
Did we future proofing?
Yeah,
Did we miss more? Because you gave me a list of 13 reasons last week.
Yeah, I have 13 reasons indeed. Like I can sum them up quickly. So it's indeed build trust and loyalty, respect from customers, employees, and investors. You tap into new customer segments. You're future-proofing your organization, so you're more sturdy. You gain credibility. You attract and engage the creme de la creme of the international workforce, because top talent is actually more likely to look for and stay at a position within a B Corp, especially Gen Z and millennials. They're very purpose driven. They look for purpose within their career, and working within a B Corp gives you a better chance of actually pursuing this purpose. You become a part of the B Corp community. B Corp community, called the Beehive, is actually quite a big network, of course, of corporates around the world, where there are network and collaboration opportunities, and you can learn from other leaders. There are also already collaborations within different B Corps, which is interesting. For example, both Brewdog and Ben & Jerry's are B Corps, and there is now coming to be a
the strawberry vanilla milkshake beer.
Milkshake. Very excited
is
for
amazing.
That. Very curious what that is going to be. But yeah, you have those
crossovers.
Which, this is cool. You uncover and act potential on risks on a timely basis, which means that because you go through this quite rigorous assessment, you're also uncovering potential risks, and you can act on them straight away before they actually turn into a problem. You can uncover and communicate underexposed positive impact activities, because I mean, a lot of companies are quite big. Maybe you have been doing things that are pretty cool that you would like to communicate, but that you didn't realize are actually positive impact activities or things that you should talk about. You can benchmark to best practices within other industries, and also like maybe share experiences and share knowledge. You can actually save operational costs. You differentiate from other businesses in your sector. You walk the walk, and this goes into Alex's questions. You actually avoid greenwashing. And one of the most important ones is you accelerate your sustainable business development and innovation processes, because the whole goal is that you use business as a force for good, of course, and do this continuously and constantly improve your organization. So constantly improve also your B impact score and your B assessment score, which means that you constantly want to become more sustainable, more social, more environmental friendly. And the way to do this is by like corporate development and in innovation as well. So you're accelerating this.
And hopefully on the way to regenerative.
Yes.
This does tie in actually nicely with Emily's question, which is a good question. Are there several grades within the B Corp certification? And I think there are, because you're a beginner and then you have to upgrade basically every year that you have B Corp certification. So how does that work?
Yeah, you have to get, you can get 80 points out of 200. And after that, you don't really have different grades, but you can see the points and where they came from and what they are right now. So you can see if a company is actually improving. And you do have like every year lists of companies that have the highest grades and the highest score actually. But a B Corp is a B Corp. And that is everyone over 80 points.
Okay. The Declaration of Interdependence. Salome is asking, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Yeah, I suppose. Is there anything specific, Salome, that you would like to elaborate on, or is it? I
have the Declaration of Independence as well on the board. And
yep, I'll bring everyone there. Oh, you already did it. Yep,
I was there already. This is the declaration that every B corporation signs and stands for. And when you go to the B leader training, and B leaders are people, individuals, consultants who help companies to go to these B Corp certification processes and help them accelerate the process of becoming a B Corp. They actually also sort of sign a social contract, which is similar to like this Declaration of Independence, only then focus on B leaders. And we, of course, also stand behind this. It is. Oh, yes.
So the interesting thing there is that it's the Declaration of Interdependence. So for one, that means that it's already in itself saying that we're not independent, we're not dependent, but we're all interdependent on each other, and we need to collaborate together in order to make this global economy move to a state where we all can collaborate and work together. So that, to me, already the title itself is already a big heart for me. Yeah, I'm curious what Salome, what is there a specific part that you were curious about? Because it's such a long piece of
that is
a long piece of text.
Especially because the declaration, it's pretty strong and like self-explanatory. So I'm very curious. What do you want to know more about it? I think there you are.
She's coming on. Yeah.
I wonder if it's something that is predetermined or something that it's collaborative written by people, or something that can evolve, or something that is set in stone already.
Nice. You were like, was it collaboratively written by the first starting companies?
Yeah.
I think
that's a really interesting question.
I'm not 100% sure about this. I will look it up. And we'll ask the B leader community. I have never heard that it is actually a collaborative process that they set this up. I think it comes from B Lab and from the people who founded B Lab. But I can actually look into it and get back to this later after.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So more and more questions keep popping up. So I love this. Many people are very interested in the B Corp certification, apparently. This is what we were kind of expecting. Let's see. So let me see. Emily again. So you mentioned that the questions of the assessment are always reviewed and upgrades to reflect current challenges. So how does the B Lab work?
Mm-hmm.
What's their approach to remain relevant with current social, economic, and ecological changes? Is that a clear question for you, Manu?
Yes, this is actually an interesting. It's one that we already had in the B leader training as well, because for now, for example, technological companies are seen as are listed as companies with a small environmental footprint, which is obviously odd in this world, because a lot of technological companies have massive environmental footprints. So they're updating this, and they are constantly keeping an eye out on like what's happening in the market from a policy perspective. They of course keep an eye out to like the Corp and to the IPCC reports, the with international. Help me out there, Pam.
Oh my God, I'm so bad with abbreviations. That's why we've
jargon buster.
So exactly.
International
panel of climate change.
That's the one. So like the most important, I say IPCC all the time, the most important report on climate change, and like the conference of the parties, which is like behind the Paris Agreement and everything, and all these like policies and developments within the markets on a global level. They keep an eye out for those and try to integrate them in the in the assessment and constantly update those questions. Yes.
Yeah. And then a question by Alex, that is actually a really interesting one. Just this February, B Corps has teamed up with the GRI standards, which is one of the two of the frameworks for ESG reporting. And they are, well, so you can read all. I'll drop the link in the chat for you because it's quite a long process to go into. So yes, they do have a correlation. They work together. How exactly? I'm not entirely sure. Do you know, Matt? We knew.
They do indeed work together. For the GRI, I'm not 100% sure how they do it right now. What I do know is that they are also collaborating with the SDGs, and that they actually have the SDG Action Manager, which is directly matched with the B impact assessment. So if you have filled in questions in the SDG Manager, they also are filled in the B impact assessment, so you can actually see where they overlap and how all the SDGs play a role within businesses and within like the corporate world. So this is very interesting. And there is another question here about how banks and financial institutions support B Corps, and are they committed to do that? This also is constantly evolving. B Corp movement has actually only been picking up really rapidly, increasing over the last couple of years. So for now, mostly investors and everything are more likely to invest in B corporations because it is a more sturdy return on investment. I don't think banks or financial institutions already officially jumped on this opportunity. Although once again, I will look this up and get back to you. These are very specific and interesting questions. I think maybe what we should do in the end, because I've been now a B leader for a couple of weeks, and this whole process and the scope of what B corporations can do and what is B Lab all about is quite big. But these are very interesting questions that didn't come across even in the B training. So you guys are very thorough. Yeah, thumbs up for that. So we will go through all of them and actually answer them, look it up for you, and send them back in the next couple of weeks, which is, I mean, I think an interesting project for us.
Yeah, it is. But so I think with banks and financial institutions, support is a big word, but similar to investors, banks are always managing risk. I mean, that's what they do. So it's very similar to what the investors are doing. So they are definitely looking for longer term plans and opportunities. So I think the collaboration between GRI and B Corps is actually a really clever and strong one. And in the end, we now have 650 frameworks for measuring some sort of sustainability within an organization, which is too much. I mean, there's so much out there. And I'm quite sure that we're going to be seeing a few that will be the top few ones that we will trust and come to be more validated, maybe even officially endorsed by banks or financial institutions. I think that is somewhere, it's a road that we cannot not take. Because otherwise it's going to be so confusing and conflicting, maybe even. But yeah, that is something in the future. That's for the future developments. Mm-hmm. Alex, it stands for benefit, indeed, a benefit corporation.
Although you also have a legal framework that actually is a benefit corporation, and that is something else again. So B Corp is not always a B Corp is always a benefit corporation, but a benefit corporation is not always a B Corp. But that is getting into the nitty-gritty. Well, just to be thorough.
One last question from Emily. What sort of support do they provide to companies wanting to become a B Corp? What do you mean with they, Emily?
She means B Lab, I assume.
Yes. I do.
Okay. Thank you.
So actually, there are quite a lot of support out there. First of all, everyone who wants to become a B Corp can freely go to the B Corp to the B Impact Assessment. It's just online. You have a lot of online resources as well. And what B Lab is doing right now is they're training consultants like me, who are interested in like using business as a force for good, to help companies go to the certification process. And these trainers who have gone through this process over and over again really know where you can make the most impact, what are things that take the longest, where you should get started, in which order you should like get your certain departments in place, because like you need different departments to hop on board. Some you need later in the certification process, some take longer, you need early in the certification process. So these B leaders really can take you throughout the whole process. if you don't want to work with a B leader itself, there are a lot of resources out there at B Lab or B Corporation Net that can help you get started. And what I would actually advise you to do if you want to go through this process is just start actually two B impact assessment accounts, one official one where you really pay attention to what you're doing, and this is your serious one where you go to the assessment for your company, where you fill in everything the way it is and never just jump ahead to your vision, but the way it currently is. And then you have the other assessment where you can play around and really see, okay, what is it all about? How can we make more impact? And use it sort of as an exploratory tool. Does this answer your question?
Totally, thanks.
Thanks.
Nice.
Pam?
More and more questions keep popping up. I see so many interesting questions popping up. Yeah, we were thinking of going a little bit into stakeholder mapping because we've been talking about making the shift from shareholder to stakeholder. And as we said, we always do a little bit of interactivity in these meetups as well. So a very nice way, because one of the questions that people always ask is like, okay, that's really nice, shareholder to stakeholder, but what does that mean? Where do I begin? And for that, you can use something as a stakeholder map. And that is a process that we can go through. I'm going to quickly check Minu. Minu, I think I made a mistake on the board and I didn't lock something.
Yeah.
Can you check if it's locked? You did. Thank you. Alex, yeah. Anyway, so what?
Alex was already walking around with it.
Yeah, I thought it was Alex.
That's okay. Keep us on our.
Anyways, yeah. So of course the question, anyways, coming back to stakeholder mapping, the question comes up like, what is a stakeholder then? How would you define that? So a shareholder, I think that's pretty clear for everyone that those are the people who are financing and who have a stake in that sense in the company. But a stakeholder more broadly is any party. So that means a person, a group, or an organization that will be affected by the organization's strategy, or it has an effect on the organization's strategy. So that is a lot broader actually than just finances and all these kind of things. It can be NGOs, it can be many other things, governments. So you really have to look at your company if you want to get started with this. Look at your company and what's going on, and your product or an idea that you have or anything else that you're starting up, and think bigger and broader, like, hey, who has an influence here? Who is contributing to this? And a stakeholder map is a visual tool to help you do that, basically. And the first step is quite easy. It's take a big piece of paper, in this case, a whiteboard online, and brainstorm, identify. And to keep it very high level today, we chose Adidas because it's a company that everybody knows, and we're going to keep it quite high level. And then, so I'll give you some time. We'll put you into breakout groups if everybody's up for that, and give you a few minutes to just brainstorm about it, identify who is affected by, who has an effect on the business of Adidas. Of course, we're in the sustainability session, so think in that direction a little bit, but please don't forget all the obvious ones either. And then the second part is the next step you're going to take is to discuss with each other and really empathize with those groups. Maybe you can share a little bit of what you put in there, and try to understand the different perspectives and how they affect each other, how they relate to each other. Maybe they influence each other. Maybe they're blocking each other, for lack of a better word. And if you don't know, then how might you find out what might be their idea around this? So it's just all research that you can do, but visualizing it, this is why we work with a lot of visualization tools. It really helps to give you that overall kind of view. And then after that, the next step would be to analyze it. In which sense you would, well, yeah, after you understand their interests, their perspectives, you try to identify issues and challenges that they might have and rank them in terms of relevance, in terms of what you're trying to do. You prioritize them. And that's going to help you to understand all the influences that they have on your company or on your project, and how you can manage them. But also, if we're looking at B Corps and the business model, maybe identify opportunities there that you might develop a new business model towards. So this is a very interesting tool to use in very many different contexts, but it's very, very useful in many ways. So let's see, Minu, have you been able to do breakout groups? To prep breakout groups in the meantime? Because you're the Zoom meister today.
I am indeed. I will do that now because we have someone new dropping in. I'll make 4 breakout rooms with 5 people, although we do have Abigail in the group in the Zoom right now, but she's cooking her dinner. So if you are with her in the Zoom link, know that she will not be able to participate, but I'll just throw her in one anyways. And I can start the breakout rooms now, and then we will see you back here in 4 minutes.
Yeah, just have a little bit of a play around with that.
And if something is not clear, or you don't know how to use Miro, or you want to ask anything else, please
let us know.
Something in. We don't talk, we write.
You can do both.
Well, you can write, yeah, because so the thing is, in step 2, we actually would love you to discuss with each other, because maybe then you put something on the post-it note that someone else hasn't. And in this case, I would say, yeah, have a conversation about it. Have a conversation about it with each other. But after, first, just do the brain dump for a few minutes and then come back together.
See you in a bit.
Plus.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm the one cooking my dinner. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Minu.
Hey, Abby. Good job multitasking.
I'm multitasking.
Yeah, don't burn it.
My rice is not looking too healthy.
That's gonna be challenging.
Yeah, I'm sorry for joining late. I was just interested to join. I haven't joined before, but I recently did my B leader training, and so I was interested in the topic and finding out more on the discussions and yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Of course, yes. No, I also recently did it. Like I finished like a month ago or something. I've been looking into it. I've been exploring like how we combine it with like our own business proposition, our own process.
Yeah.
But today the question showed me that there's so many elements that I'm not like
there's so
aware
much.
of.
I don't know how you found your training, but there's a lot to take in, and there's so many different questions, and you can go so deep. There's just not enough time to get into that level of detail on everything, is there?
No. The training the training is very good. It's very interesting, but mine was 4 days, and then indeed I think going through the certification process and all the 200 questions a couple of times with companies from different sectors is definitely quite important to really get the hang of it. And then you have all these specific things indeed of like which kind of investors are interested in it. Is there already like from the banks and next to like ESG and like combined too? And just because it's such a holistic approach to like business and using business as a force for good, it has like an almost infinite amount of elements and questions you could ask about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's and it's always being updated as well, isn't it? So you feel like, and there's so much being written about it that it's I find it difficult to keep on top of everything, but just because there's so much kind of out there, isn't there?
Yeah, the other day I wrote a blog about like 13 reasons why to become a B Corp, and I spent like 3 days just reading articles, just because there's so much. Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, sorry, I'm holding you up, but it's good to, good
totally
to connect.
fine. There's so many things that I could ask so much more questions and could discuss in more depth and with a more critical view. But I understand that other people have as well other questions too.
No, I love it. I love the critical questions because that makes me think as well. Okay, that's indeed also a perspective you can think about it. And yeah, yes, I'm still in this maybe butterfly phase that I'm just really in love with.
I understand. I think my basic question is on the why. So we are in a capitalistic system. To change that, you need to be a government to change it by the rules. To change something like that from the inside is in that sense tricky, that if you don't play by the rules as it is right now, you're not growing as fast as others and that you will be thrown out of the market. Yeah. So the question would be for me, how does a B Corp, becoming a B Corp helps me to grow faster than others? You mentioned some of the things, you get good talent and so on, but are there really cases around that? Or is that at the moment just a belief that is carried by millennials that say, wow, it has to be that way?
No, there are actually a lot of cases around this. Yeah, and especially from like a customer perspective. People are just more and more voting with their wallet, and that is not a just millennial thing that we want to see it that way, but it's actually something that we see happening in the markets. So they have better return on investments. They are more likely to get investors. They are more sturdy. What I said, like 63% more likely to go through to make it through a financial crisis than non-B Corp certificate companies within the same sector. So there are definitely data-based cases that can show that becoming a B Corp not only from a like idealistic almost standpoint makes sense, but also absolutely from a business perspective. And I know that there are also corporations who mostly do it because of the business perspective, because it attracts more customers and it is more credibility and investors and all of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because like the German meat market is a counter example. People say, "Oh, I love ecological meat," and then but they buy the cheap one.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like sometimes when I look at the data of like these kind of things, it also makes me a bit sad. As in, like the vegetarian selection in supermarkets is rapidly growing, and sometimes I have the feeling that everybody is a vegetarian. And in the Netherlands, there are more and more, like you have the vegetarian butcher, and there are more options available. But then if you look at the data, meat consumption is actually still increasing. We're like, yeah, indeed, like how far, to which extent do you live in a bubble? That is often the question. With B Corps and also with any social economic change, any behavior change, it's it takes a long time to make this to go through this transition, and that's indeed time we maybe do not have. So I wish it would go faster, but at least it is change. And if you look at what governments have been doing over the last couple of decades, I don't know if they will take action. You have the weaker countries, like the well-being countries, that instead of like for GDPR, they focus on like happiness index. But that is a very limited amount of governments doing that. It's just, I think it's just 4 or 5, which are interestingly all led by women. But yeah, so for me, it is like inside out. Yes, it takes time. Transitions are always slow, but waiting for governments, from my perspective, is not an option.
Yeah, so well, I think in regards to change is always slow, but it has, you have to make it exponentially, because that actually drives it then in the end. So if you start from 1 to 2, that's not a big step, but it's exponentially. From 2 to 4 is not a big step. But if you make 10 steps like that, or 15, actually you get into the numbers.
I think that's why B Corps and Beehive is so interesting, because it's like collaboration and it's together, like this movement.
Isn't it? It's
movement.
about being really attractive for others to join and creating that movement.
Yeah.
So it becomes then the critical mass on the numbers side of things.
Yes, it's the tipping point actually. But, I did say 4 minutes, and I think we're far over it. So I'm gonna jump back to the main room and then summon everyone back to like the board, and I'll see you in there. So, have a nice last chat.
Good.
You're on mute.
Talking to myself. I was saying that I always love to see how a stakeholder map is built up, and what people can come up with, and how much there actually is to it. You almost can go like keep going infinitely. Let's see, everyone will probably be back in a couple of seconds, so we can keep going again.
There we are.
There you are.
Well, I had a lovely time with 2 ladies in one of the breakout sessions. And there's been a lot going on the board. Oh, wow.
Just organizing it for a bit.
Yeah, I can see that. Normally we would go into this. So this is for just for a little bit of interactivity and brainstorming going on. Normally we would do this a little bit more structured, and now we would see if there are any doubles in here, because a lot of people start sharing the same thing. Take out those and then this is a very collaborative, like I just explained to Jenny and Emily, this is in this case a very collaborative process, especially if you're working with I cannot come up with the word. What is going on? Our English is broken today.
Yeah, I know.
Multidiscipline. Thank you. Maybe if you come up with multidiscipline team, it's always horrible. It's very interesting to see that how sometimes people struggle in the beginning going beyond customers, shareholders, and employees and suppliers maybe, and then starting to think bigger and bigger and bigger as we go on. We put 2 models in there in the bottom for you, if you can use in the analysis phase, if that is something that you're interested in. How you can then sort of structure those stakeholders. You can use a matrix for it, interest and influence. And then you would have to know a little bit better what problem you're trying to attack, what problem you're solving. Maybe you have a project already in place. and you kind of want to know who has a high interest in your project or a low interest in your project from their perspective, and also who has a high level of influence on your project or a low level of influence. So for instance, within a company, not necessarily sustainability, but within a company, maybe internally, specific departments have a lot more influence on what you're trying to achieve than others. So you want to give those a high level of influence, but maybe their interest level is really low. So you have to keep them more informed and more engaged. That will then be on you. So you can kind of draw conclusions from where in that matrix you put them. And then the one on the right is more with the circles. So again, you have there, this is a different one you can use for broader projects. So the middle one is those people or groups of people who are directly engaged with your project or with your business or with your idea. Then you have another layer of people who are, or groups who are contributing. And then the third layer is a little bit more distant still. They have an influence, but there's not really a direct connection with them. So think government, think NGOs, these kind of things often are in influence, but do not underestimate because they do have an influence on what you're doing. So that's why it's good to always figure out who your stakeholders are and to position them. You're zooming in? Am I zooming in? Right. Okay. So there was so many questions. I'm like, wow. I want to come back to one last question from Emily, because she mentioned in the chat, so at some point, would you be okay sharing with what your objective is getting trained as a B leader? And I would, well, I'm going to be maybe doing B leader training as well. I think it really ties in with what we are trying to achieve as the Green Sprint. And as Manu explained, like the certification process is going to take 8 months or maybe even up to a year. Within our Manu and my combination, we are very similar in what we do, but we also have different specialities, which is good. So I have a business strategy background, so I might be interested in being that consultant that does take them through that certification process, but that is something that I will have to figure out in my B leader training. And the second part that we're both very interested in is, as we've explored, if you have a B Corp certification, you need to be innovating and you need to be improving yourself continuously. And that is exactly what we're doing with the Green Sprint. We're helping companies improve themselves and accelerate sustainability within their organization. So doing that within the framework of the B Corps, yeah, I look very much forward to working with B Corps because they have the mindset and the intention of doing it. And that's just going to give so much positive energy to the work that we can do with them and make magic happen. So that would be my answer. I don't know if Manu has anything to add to that.
No, absolutely. You're 100% right. That's, for me, that was the reason as well. B Corps and companies that we want to become B Corps, they have realized that we have to go from a stakeholder to from a shareholder to a stakeholder perspective and vision. They want to be better. They want to use business as a force for good. And I would love to work together with companies like that. But there's still a long way to go. You can become a B Corp where you have 80 points, but you can get up to 200. So there is a lot of room for improvement, and there is a lot of room for like social sustainable development. And with the Green Sprint, we can actually help them accelerate this process. And even companies who are not B Corps yet, but are going through the certification process, and they recognize certain areas within their companies where they need to improve, they need to innovate, and we can help them with this. So it is this combination between accelerating sustainable transition and accelerating the process of becoming a B Corp and becoming a better B Corp. And for me, the connection just makes a lot of sense, just as the connection to like the SDGs for us makes a lot of sense. And we are at the moment exploring several frameworks of the 650 frameworks that are out there at the moment. Which makes sense for the Green Sprint to collaborate with. And yeah, our goal in the end is to accelerate this transition. And there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. So that's why we hop on the wagon of these kind of initiatives as the B Corps or the SDGs or GRI, maybe at some point in the future.
Yeah. So much to explore and so much to departure from. I think that's you're welcome, Emily. I think that's that's the main thing. There's already so much happening, and that's just the beginning. So if they have an ESG or they have a certification, that's just the starting point. There's still so much to be improved and done in terms of operations and processes and business models. There's a world to win, to make all business force for good, which is the ultimate goal, I suppose. That said, we've gone a little bit over time, but 10 minutes to the hour. But yeah, I think Minou wrapped it up before. Like any questions that we haven't been able to answer, we would happily answer them. In the end, you will see, you can find us on LinkedIn, obviously. We do have a Slack community that's still very much in the baby phases. Alex.
That link is not working. I tried to do it.
Thank you for that. We will try to fix that.
I will more in the email when we are sending email to wrap this up with you, to everyone who signed up at Meet but in Eventbrite. I will send a new link so you can join the Slack community. No worries.
Awesome. Yeah, so feel free to connect with us. And as said, any questions that we haven't been able to answer, we'll try to answer later. If we miss one, by all means, please excuse us a little bit and ask us the question again, and then we'll answer it directly with you. And yeah, anything else, Minou?
I am just, I can't help it. I want to answer everyone's questions, and I saw a last one.
I know.
If it does apply to any industry, and yes, it does. It does apply to any industry. Whatever you're operating in, you can go to the B Corp certification process. Yes. Sorry.
No worries. Love the smiley, Snezka. Love the smiley. Cheeky last. Yes, love it. No worries. So that said, I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you guys very much for joining. And we'll see you hopefully next month. So
perfect.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.